Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our latest webinar, Buying Property in Portugal. We are just waiting for people to join. So we're going to just wait 5 minutes for everybody to come in, and then I'll introduce you to my guests, and we'll start the presentation. In the meantime, if you want to tell us in the chat section where you're from, that'll be great. Where you're listening from, we'd love to hear where you're sitting in the world. So there's a little chat function on the top left. I think it was top right hand side of your screen, a little chat icon. And if you pop a note in there, just tell us where you're from. We're excited to know where everyone is listening from. So, and we'll just give it a few more minutes while we wait. I can see already that we have somebody from Florida. So that must be about 12 o'clock midday in Florida. I think they're 5 hours. Noon exactly. Thank you. Are you a Dolphins fan, a Miami Dolphins fan? Don't know. Do you know anything, Sofia, about the Miami Dolphins?
Not really.
Oh, Tim?
You
No.
can ask me about Sporting or
Chiefs fan.
Benfica. I can tell you
Chiefs
about
fan.
that.
Okay, he's a Chiefs fan. That's a good team to support. For Tim and Sofia, they're the Super Bowl champions, and they got the best quarterback in the world.
Yeah, I saw
It's a
him
good
beat
team
on
too. It's been a good
CNBC.
few years, exactly. I know we do have some existing clients as well listening. So great to have some familiar names listening as well. Thank you for joining us. And I know we have some people from Belgium, from the Netherlands. But tell us where you're listening from while we just wait. We've got 46 people in already. So yeah, good turnout. Great turnout. Witbank, South Africa. Okay, amazing. Witbank, South Africa. That's real central South Africa. Wales, wonderful. That's where my grandmother was born. My grandmother was born in Cardiff in Wales. So awesome. I don't even know how to pronounce this name. Conway?
Conway.
Not sure. Who else? Let's see. So we've got a couple of continents already covered on our webinar. That's pretty cool. If anybody else is listening, want to tell us where you're listening from? I know we've got people listening from Portugal as well. There's a lawyer inside the thing. I don't know if we should remove him. And we've got a lady here from Belgium, but she has an apartment in Nazaré. Great place to have an apartment. Really good. Okay, I think, guys, let's give it another minute, and then we can start. Pennsylvania, America. That's cool. I think your local Pennsylvania team would be the Steelers. Pittsburgh. Tim, Sofia, come on, help us out here.
That one I cannot help you out.
The best person.
Oh, the Eagles, much better. Okay, I like the Eagles. I like the Eagles. Okay, the guy that I said it was the Steelers has left. Obviously upset the guy. Okay, let's get this going, I think. All right, thank you everybody for joining this webinar. Just a couple of house rules. We cannot see you. So, this is the opportunity. If you want to wave at us, give us a thumbs up, go ahead. If you even want to give us the middle finger, we can't see it, so it's all good. But we can't see you. There is a chat function, which I'll explain to you about using. This is in the This is to use at the end of the seminar. We're going to have a questions and answer session right at the end. So please hold your questions until then. If you do want to log them in, that's not a problem, but I will only be checking them at the end when we go through the questions and the questions and answer section at the end of the seminar. Last seminar that we did was about our beautiful Silver Coast and what makes it such a special area and what we love about it. This one's we're gonna drill down a little bit more and talk about cost of living in this area in particular. It does differ from region to region for certain things. And luckily for everybody listening, you're not going to be listening to just me for 45 minutes. So you're welcome, because I have two very, very good guests, very good, much better at me than with the math, with the statistics and the numbers. But I've got Sofia and Tim joining me for this. So just a bit about myself. My name's Dylan. I'm a realtor here on Portugal's Silver Coast. I'm originally from South Africa, but I made the very, very, very good decision 15 years ago to move to Portugal permanently, and it's been my happy home ever since. I've lived here since 2009. I have three kids. One of them is a teenager, which is why hairs on my beard are starting to go white and why I'm losing hair on the top of my head. Tim knows about that with teenagers. And I
Yeah.
have a Portuguese wife, which is why I have a tummy the size that it is. Because of all the good food that she feeds me. Anyway, so, but I would like to introduce my guests. Sofia, all the way from our Portugal accounting office in Alfezeral. Hello, thanks for being on the webinar.
Hello, thanks for having me. So would
Tell
you
us a
like to
little bit
say a few
about
things
what's that?
about myself?
Yes, tell us about
Want
you,
to know
please.
a little about myself? Okay, so my name is Sofia Cardoso. I'm an accountant. I've been an accountant for over 20 years now. For the last 10 years, I've been the technical director of Portugal Accounting, which is an accounting firm on the Silver Coast, and I've been specialized in working with foreign clients. Until now, we've worked with around 30 different countries, 30 to 35. So we're very used to foreign clients.
Wonderful. Sophia, I mean, it's a difficult question to ask because you've lived here your whole life. But tell us what you love about the Silver Coast, what you love about living here.
Okay, so I'm a little suspicious because I was born, raised, and I work on the Silver Coast. So it's my home, so I love it very much. It's a quiet place. It's not like a big city like Lisbon or Porto. This is much quieter. Um, Everyone knows everyone. So here where I work, I go outside, everyone knows who I am. I park my car in a funny place. Someone will knock on my door saying, "It's your car that's on the way." So yes, it's like we live in a village. Let's say it like this.
Amazing. You got any favorite spots on the Silver Coast? I think I know the answer to this, but come on.
Yes, because it's not new, although lots of people don't know it yet. But I've been there since I remember. So it's a small beach between Nazaré and São Pedro de Moel, so to say. It's called Valfurado. It's still very, how do you say, there's no one there most of the time. Yes, in summer there will be more people than in winter, but it's a very special place. It's a beach, not many people, not so known until now. Now it's getting a little more fashionable, but yes, it's one of my favorite places.
Amazing. Tim, hi Tim, all the way from Belgium. Thank you for being on the webinar. Tell us a little bit about you, Tim.
Well, my name is Tim. I'm 45 years old. I'm a husband and father of two children, a daughter of 16-year-old and a little boy of 3 years old. And in fact, I'm responsible for the IMO Portugal branch in Antwerp, in Belgium. So we also have a branch in Belgium. Of course, from here we focus mainly on the Dutch and Flemish clients that need an introduction at the beautiful Silver Coast. So I don't live in Portugal, unfortunately, yet, but that time will come.
Yet.
But of course, I go back and forward a lot of time. And it reminded me today, in fact, we are 2024, that my first visit to Silver Coast was already 20 years ago. It was 2004. And at that point in time, I fell in love with the Silver Coast straight away, the authenticity, the politeness of the people, the nice food and everything. And it's very nice to see that 20 years later, we still have the authenticity that I discovered there 20 years ago. Of course, things have changed in terms of construction and everything. But yeah, I love it, and I do the job in between Antwerp and the beautiful Silver Coast. So that's what I do. Yeah.
What are you missing? What are you missing about us? Not us. I know you miss me. I know, but what are you
Yeah.
missing about us on the? What are you missing about the Silver Coast at the moment, Tim?
Yeah. Well, we always talk about the simple life, but in fact, that's what it's all about. It's a completely different pace of living your life here in Belgium, the Netherlands, compared to Portugal. The people are more friendly, and indeed, the cost of living, in which we will handle in detail as of today. Every time I go back to Belgium from Portugal, it's a shock when I go on a restaurant, when I have my energy bills, when I have my taxes to pay. Yeah, it's a shock every time, every time. And of course, the weather, it's really a complete different way of living.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that. So let's jump
Yeah.
right in, shall we, to this presentation, and we're going to be talking about a couple of the just cost of living that you can expect for this part of Portugal. We'll start off talking about in, the investment part, and about the property side of things to start off with. Um, House prices on the Silver Coast. I'll just talk briefly, and Tim, if you want to add to whatever I'm saying, please go ahead because you're so well versed on all of this. House prices on the Silver Coast. Like Tim mentioned, we have seen prices go up over the last decade quite considerably. This is a good thing, in my opinion. I think it's a good thing to be living and investing in a place where our property prices are increasing every year. Um, there is a supply and demand issue, which we spoke about in the last webinar. But just to give everybody a general idea of property costs here, for an apartment on the Silver Coast, you can look at starting prices around 280,000 euros and houses starting at about 400,000. Okay. Just to be clear to everybody listening, we're talking about new build. Okay. We're not talking about ruins. We're not talking about properties that need to be remodeled. As the Leisure Launch Group, we specialize in modern and new build properties. So these are the kind of price points we're talking about. When we compare that to places like Lisbon, Porto, and Algarve, there you're looking at prices starting at 400K for an apartment, in some cases more, and for houses at least 600,000 and upwards, depending, of course, where, if they're on a resort, where in Lisbon, where in Porto. But there's quite a substantial difference between the property costs in this region compared to some of the more well-known regions of Portugal. Tim, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, indeed, it's correct what you say. We also, as we are not a real estate as such, we are a developer. We see how prices have evolved the last years, and as you say, there's a supply issue in Portugal. That's for sure. We need much more units as a country a year, a new build, just to cover up what the market needs. And we, as a developer, see also the other side. Local authorities have become very strict on even issuing licenses to do our projects. So demand stays the same as we work on an international market. We don't do project inland. We do projects along the coast side, which is totally different thing. So it's an issue. And in fact, you are right, Dylan, the prices went up the last years. But in the past, Portugal simply was too cheap compared to other countries. That's also a thing we should mention, I think.
Yeah.
So we catched up a bit, but if you compare it towards other countries and also investors that buy with us, you still have a lot of value for your money at the beautiful Portugal. But house prices are rising, but that's a good thing. Every single client that bought with us the last 15 or 20 years realized in case they sell, but they don't sell a lot because they also know they did a good investment. If those properties come on the market, for sure they realize a nice capital gain. Yeah.
Perfect. Let's jump on to the next part, which is inland or on the coast. Now, you did allude to that, Tim, about that we are on the coastline. Inland, as everybody knows, is cheaper. the further you're going in. But when we're talking about the Silver Coast, what people need to be aware of, we're talking about a much smaller geographical region than, say, for instance, the Algarve. Okay, so and in a lot of places in the world where you'd have to drive 1 hour to be considered a rural location or a agricultural location, in the Silver Coast you can be 20 minutes inland and you're in quite a rural location, quite a countryside, let's say a countryside location. The prices are considerably different, but Tim, there are advantages to being on the coast when you're looking at things from not just a lifestyle perspective, but also from an investment perspective. Just talk about some of those advantages of being coastal as opposed to being considerably inland.
Well, of course, when you are at the coast, for sure, you have much more facilities around. I think that's very important for people who want to go live there permanently, or also for investors. Like in our region, we have the city of Caldas da Rainha. That's the biggest city of the Silver Coast. It's close to the coast, but you have a hospital over there. You have all nice shops, restaurants. So you have everything you need. So I would prefer the coast for sure. And also from an investment point of view, when we talk about rentals, you will have more rentals at the coast, that's for sure. But again, the long-term capital gain is to be found at the coast for sure, because you have to divide the Portuguese property market, in fact, in two parts. And that's the same in almost every country. You have the local people who buy more land inward, and the international market that's more alongside the coast. I built myself a house in Adaduru in the year 2021, and I wasn't really aware of that at the time, but looking to it now, it was one of the best investments I did in my whole life. It's as simple as that. Also, in terms of an international perspective, I don't have to tell you, Dylan, we sold to more than 35 nationalities. Demand is high, stays high, like from people like United States, for example. They have more value for money than they have in their own country. Also, in terms of financing, for example, interest rates are about 3% lower in Portugal than they are in the United States. So also in terms of investing, you can still do good business in Portugal nowadays. But I for sure would prefer the coast compared to inland. Also, the structures inland in terms of electricity are not as high level as they are at the coast, for sure. Yeah.
Internet, things like that. Well, I mean, the other thing to add to that is, of course, we're going to jump onto the next part of the investment and capital growth on properties, which is really where the big investment is. But from a rental perspective, what people need to be aware of when investing here, especially if they're considering renting their property out, the majority of the people that you are going to be renting to are Portuguese. This makes us a very unique market in that regard. It's a very loyal market. It's a market that comes back. You heard Sofia talking about the beach that she's been going to since she was a child. This is what Portuguese families do. And in this area, you still have those traditional coastal towns, Nazaré, São Martinho de Porto, Foz do Aurélio, where people go year in, year out. So that's a very consistent, a very loyal rental market. But the more important thing is Portuguese love the sea. They love the coast. They want to rent near as possible to the beach. They want to be able to walk to their local restaurants and to have their bifanas and have their sapateiras and their camarão and all of these delicious things and their cold beer in the summer. But that's what makes a coastal location such an interesting location from a rental perspective as well. But this is not the only way that people are going to make money from their property. And in my opinion, the most interesting return on investment that people can expect is when we're talking about the capital growth. And we've mentioned it, Tim, briefly, but just give us an insight into what people can expect from a capital growth point of view when investing in this area in a new build property.
Yeah. Well, of course, as you already mentioned, Dylan, we talk about new build. That's very important. If you acquire a property in Portugal, it's important to acquire a property that is delivered key in hand. So from the start, you know perfectly the timing, the budget of your house. That's very important. Don't try to do everything on yourself, buying a plot, looking for an architect, technical engineer. It's very challenging. We know how development works. Even to get to the architectural approval of a project, it's not that easy. So capital growth starts, of course, with buying at the right price on the right location. That's where it starts anyway. New build rules the last years in Portugal have become quite strict in terms of insulation, acoustical, thermal insulation. You also have to use heat pumps and stuff like that nowadays. So go for quality. That is also very important. And if we look at the combined returns of rentals and capital gain on longer term, I think it's safe to say the last years at Silver Coast, you could realize a return of between 10 and 15% a year easily when you buy on the right locations, of course. So that's what we see in our experience. If clients do real sale for one reason or another, that's the type returns we are talking about. But as you say, Dylan, you must be realistic. Rentals, okay, to cover your costs, to have some return, but the most important is the capital growth of your investment on the longer term, because supply will be not growing the coming years because of several reasons, because of townhomes becoming more severe. People who bought the last years also at low interest rates know they did a bargain. They will not put it on the market. And also a lot of Portuguese people own their property. There are not a lot of mortgages outstanding towards Portuguese people, so they are not depending on a bank. So all those factors combined make sure that if you can acquire a property new build, you'll do a very good investment on the long term. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking 10, 15% per year of a return on a property. That's way more than what they could if they do if they're expecting an immediate return on rental income. So it's a
Yeah.
fantastic investment from that perspective. And then, like you may, I think the other thing, and we touched on it, is the supply and the demand. We're running out of property. We're running out of space. We're running out of space to build new build properties, which is a good thing as well. That's going to drive up property prices even more because the demand is going to continue to grow for this amazing area. Let's move on to our next section, property taxes, and to be more precise, property running costs and things like that. I'm going to tag Sofia in here. And Sofia, could you just tell us a little bit about some of the closing costs or buying costs that people need to be aware of when they're purchasing a property in Portugal?
Okay, so when we plan to buy a property in Portugal, being a resident or a non-resident doesn't matter. Everyone will have to pay these three costs, so to say. IMT tax, which is the transfer tax, stamp duty, and notary fees. IMT tax is the tax that you pay because the property will be transferred from someone to your private name. The stamp duty is a tax that you pay to the government, and notary fees because every time you buy a property in Portugal, you need to sign a deed at the notary and do the registration there so that everything is legal and the property is registered in your own name. So basically, those are the three costs that you have just by buying the property. In average, we say it's an average that these three costs added should be between 7 to 8% over the price of the property.
Yeah, that would also include your legal fees as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. One thing just to be aware of as well, for those of you listening, considering buying a new built house, and this is particularly applies to a house, especially the way that we structure our new build properties. Generally speaking, and again, we're not going to give away too much because we want to just keep things moving. And if you do want to find out more, please get in touch with us afterwards. But you can save quite considerably on your buying costs when buying a new build house. Because your buying costs will be calculated on the cost of the land as opposed to the cost of the overall property. So that's something just to be aware of. In some cases, you can save 20 to 30,000 euros just on your buying costs alone. But chat to us about that later. Let's move on to the next thing. Sophia, you're still on with us now. When people are owning a property, running a property, or considering selling a property, there's a couple of costs that they should be aware of. We've got Amy. Sounds like we're listing cheerleader names, Amy and Amy, and we've got capital gains tax. Um, just take us through what these are, and what people can expect from these costs when owning and selling a property.
Okay, so from the moment that you buy a property in Portugal and it's registered in your name, you will be liable for IMI. IMI or IMI, how do you prefer? It's the municipality tax. So it's the tax that you pay every year, calculated according to the value of your property, that it's paid directly to the municipality where the property is located. This fund
Yeah,
will
in
be
some parts of the world,
used
we
by
call
the
that council
municipality.
tax or state tax.
Yes, I say
Yeah,
municipality, but yes, council tax will be the same. It's the municipal tax that you pay over the property every year. This is the money that the municipality will use to provide public services. So keep the roads in good condition, public lighting, public gardens. So it's the money that's used to keep the district or the that town in place.
yeah, and
After
also if
that,
you've ever been to a place like Salí de Porto, Nazaré, where they have those amazing village parties, your IMI is also going
yes,
towards those parties. Okay, so
exactly.
the band that was hired for the festa in Salí de Porto. Thank you to
You pay the
your
portion.
municipal property tax for that. Just a quick breakdown. I mean, generally in this area, you're not going to pay more than 0.45%, if I'm not mistaken, on the municipal value of the property, correct?
Yes. So the tax rate can be between 0.3 to 0.45%. It will depend on the municipality where your property is located. So each municipality has the right to decide the tax rate every year between 0.3 and 0.45%. This tax is not calculated over the purchase price, it's calculated over the cadastral value. It's the value that the tax department gives to your property. In general, it's less than the purchase price.
Okay, thank you. Tim, there are, I mean, we've mentioned already a few times, we're new build specialists, especially when purchasing a house. There are certain incentives in purchasing a property and building a house or building a house from the ground up. Again, something that people can contact us about, but just give us a brief overview about the possible incentives there.
Yeah. Well, when we're talking about the VAT incentives, one of the most common one and most popular one are, of course, setting up a Portuguese company to do a new build construction. As you already mentioned, on the plot value, you pay a purchase tax, but on the construction part, there's a 23% VAT rate that you can not pay if you set up a company. Then on the invoices of the construction part, there is no VAT of 23%. Of course, you have to set up a company that has a certain activity, and then the VAT is paid by the people that rent the property. But yeah, there are incentives for sure. And in most of the
Yeah,
cases, people who set up a company to invest like this already have a company in the country where they live. But of course, Sofia can help those clients to have a look on which structure is the best to do this. But on this point, I really would like to point out that also Portugal, in terms of efficiency of administration in setting up companies, the speed, the way it goes is very, very efficient. I can assure you that it takes much more time to set up a company in my country than it takes in Portugal. In Portugal, it can be done in 1 or 2 days. The lawyer can set it up. They have like a sort of pre-approved list of company names with the right structure behind. So it can all go very fast. But of course, it's always to be looked at with a tax advisor on what's the best way for every client, because every client is different, of course. But yeah,
yeah,
for sure, there are interesting VAT incentives still as of today in Portugal.
perfect. Okay, well, again, contact us and to chat more
Yeah.
about this, and we can give you more details. Let's move on. We're going to chat about average costs and more like day-to-day costs. Um, I'll start us off here and just talk about general day-to-day living. Now, there's a lot of stuff to cover here, so I'm going to try to be as brief as I can and just as general as I can. For those of you listening from different parts of the world, try to kind of do your calculations so that you can compare it in your mind. But when we're talking about sort of your essentials, okay, so cup of coffee, Portugal, it's very expensive for coffee. It's like 80 cents. Okay, 80 cents for a good cup of coffee. Wine at a nice restaurant, You're going to be looking at about 10 to 15 euros for a really good bottle of wine. If you're getting the house wine, which I got to tell you is also really, really good in a nice, classy glass jar, you're looking at between 5 to 7 euros for a nice house wine. Eating out, if you're going to like a really what we would consider here like a really fancy restaurant, you're going to be looking about 20 to 30 euros per person. That would include the wine. That'll be your dessert, and that's something really sort of more upmarket. But today on the Silver Coast, and this is where it's really important to differentiate because on the Silver Coast, the cost of living is still relatively low when you compare it to places like the Algarve to Lisbon. These places have become quite expensive to eat out and things like that. But when you're looking at like a traditional, what we call a tashka here on the Silver Coast, a traditional diner, just a normal mom and pop restaurant, you could still walk in and you could be paying between 10 and 15 euros. We call it the plat du dia, plate of the day, whatever grandma's cooking in the kitchen. 10, 15 euros per person. That'll be your coffee. That'll be your dessert. That'll be your starter. That'll be your drink, whatever you're having to drink. And it's really, really affordable. And it's delicious. I mean, we don't have to get into that because that'll be a whole nother webinar is food in Portugal if we went down that rabbit hole. Um, and then just if you're thinking about household shopping, really it's difficult to say because everybody has their own thing, but you could quite comfortably buy household shopping 200 to 300 euros for the month and pack your house full of stuff. If you go to, we still have in this area lovely grocery farmers markets, and there you're going to still be buying fruit and veg for between 1 to 2 euros per kilo. Still really affordable. It's fresh. It's delicious. It's homegrown. It's not in a bag. It's not overly processed or produced. Tim, I mean, how do these, just because you're in a different country to us, how does this compare to where you are?
Well, that was the shock I was talking about at the beginning of the webinar. But like last Sunday, I went to the Belgian coast just with my wife and my little son of 3 years. So he ate children's spaghetti. There was no wine, there was no nothing, just two fish. And the bill was 105 euros, just to give you an idea. If I eat exactly the same in one of my favorite restaurants in Portugal, Tibino, Tavola, you name them, the local ones, it's around 35 euros. So that's the price difference we are talking about. And also when I go to the supermarket here in Belgium, or I go to a Portuguese supermarket, the differences are huge. They are huge.
Yeah.
And as you say, also in Portugal, I also recommend clients not to go to the big known names in Portugal, but go to Praça da Fruta, go to Caldas, go to your local butcher, to your local bakery, because there you find the real Portuguese lifestyle and the best prices. So that's why we also give the clients the welcome card with some nice reductions if they support the local community, because it's in the best interest for everybody. But I can say, compared to the country where I live, Belgium, the prices in Portugal are on average between 35 and 40% cheaper on average when you look at everything. So that's the difference we are talking about from my own perspective. Yeah.
Tim, I mean, you're not ready to move to Portugal because if you move to Portugal, you would not be so skinny. Like within like months, you know, you look more
for
like
sure.
me. So I don't know if you're ready for that. Let's just quickly talk about a couple of other things that I know people will be curious to know about. Medical. This is something again where it is superb value for money. I know you don't like to. I don't actually like to talk about medical as superb value for money, but the reality is, if you're a resident in Portugal and if you're taking part in the public and you get an SNS number and you become part of the public health service, it's for free. Okay. The health system here is incredibly robust. That's what we pay Social Security for. It's an incredibly robust system, and you can go and see a GP on the day, a local doctor at your a family doctor at your local health center, for free. Okay. Also, your prescription drugs are heavily subsidized as well, which is really important to understand. And then for people that are thinking about just, coming here for a holiday, but they just want to make sure that if anything happens, you do have private medical insurance here, which most hospitals, most doctors will accept. And that you can be looking at, on average, full medical cover, 100 to 120 euros per person. That'll be full coverage, okay, which is very, very reasonable. That's private medical, private care. Let's also then jump on to energy and internet costs, Tim. Again, huge difference when we're comparing Portugal to the other parts of the world. Basically, just to put it in a nutshell, running a house in Portugal, an average household, we're talking water, internet, television, electricity, potentially gas, whatever. We're looking at about 150 euros maximum per month for an average Portuguese household. This again, when you compare this to other places, is very, very reasonable.
Yeah, it is, because I made the calculation. It was a nice exercise to make before the webinar started. My house in Belgium, and I don't have a big family, and I don't put the heating on 25 degrees, but I pay like 400 euros a month, and I have quite a recent house. So in terms of
That's just
utilities,
heating?
no, it's heating, electricity, and water. It's
Okay.
400 euros a month. And I'm quite up to date with all techniques, but of course, we live in a different climate. And if you have a
Climate
new
help.
built house in Portugal that is adapted to the most recent regulation, it makes a huge difference. We also have the solar panels for the heating, warm water heating system in Portugal. So in reality, yeah, the average cost over there is about 100 to 150 euros a month. So again, a big difference because people have quite fast the intention to talk about tax advantages in Portugal and stuff like that. But my first reply is always, don't focus only on tax advantages, focus on what you can do with your money in the country you are considering to go living. That's your direct return and the most important one, I think, apart from the quality of living. But yeah, it makes a huge difference if I compare my Belgian bills to Portuguese bills, that for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Sophia, let's jump to just general property costs. So when we talk about, or we already spoke about your IMI costs, which, like we said, range from 0.3 to 0.45 of the municipal value of the property. What are some of the other costs that people can expect, like condo fees, property management? Just take us through those briefly.
I just would like to add something that we didn't discuss on the previous slide, which is IEB. So it's an additional
IMI.
EB, just to be safe.
Yes.
It's the same rules as EB. The tax rates are a little different, and it's only paid by those who have property of a high value. You have to
Okay.
have a municipal value of over 600,000 euros to pay this tax. But also, it's a yearly tax, it's a municipal tax, but only paid by some people. So that
Okay.
there are no surprises. There might be a special EB besides EB. So every year you will pay EB if you own a property. If you have an apartment, you will probably have to pay condominium fees. It will depend on the common parts, on the size of the property, but I would say at tops, I would pay 80 euros per month, I think, for an apartment. If you have a house, you only pay a condominium fees on an apartment. If you own a house, you will probably have to pay property management fees. I would say 90 euros per month in average.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
There's Tim, there's
would,
something that you
if you
mentioned to
allow
me the
me,
other
I
day
would like to
in
jump in on that just to make a comparison. For example,
For example,
sometimes taxes exist in other countries that don't exist in Portugal. In Belgium, for example, if you buy a second home at the Belgian coast and you don't put your official address there, the town halls have the authority to impose you a second home tax, apart from the municipality tax you already pay. And that can go quite high. I have a friend who has an apartment at the Belgian coast, a simple 2-bedroom. He pays 2,000 euros a year as a second home tax just because he uses it as a second home on top of the normal tax. So that's also quite a big difference. In Portugal, you don't make that distinction in terms of taxes. Do I use it as a first home or as a second home? That are costs in other countries that can go quite high. And also in terms of that, Portugal is really the place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a second home tax here, Sophia. No.
But
Okay.
it exists in a lot of other countries and can go quite high.
no, here sorry, you will pay municipal tax over all the properties, but you won't be taxed extra because you own a second or a third home. There's no extra tax just for owning property.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Let's open up the floor. People that are listening, now's the time to ask us your questions. We'll try to answer as many as we can in the next 5 minutes or so. So I do have a question from G. DaCosta. G, there will be a possibility to review this webinar afterwards. You will be able to rewatch it. So thank you for that. Any other questions? Let's see what we've got here. What is typically included in the €90 property management fee? Okay, basically we will be looking at generally if you're working with a professional property management company, and here we also just have to stipulate work with professionals. Don't work with a guy that's working out of the boot of his car, the trunk of his car. Work with a proper established property management company who will look after it. What that will typically include, again, we're talking about €90 starting. Obviously, if you've got a pool that needs to be maintained, if you've got a garden that needs to be kept, those will be a bit more expensive. But general property management costs will be someone coming in, checking on your property, opening it up every 2 weeks, running your taps, running your machines, checking your mail, making sure that your property is still good, giving it a good air out. That's generally what will be included in property management costs, and just someone just regularly going past your property. Luckily, we live in a safe place, so it's not really a security thing. It's more just opening up your doors, letting the property air out, checking that your air cons are still working, that your taps are still running, that your internet's still working, checking your mailbox in case you've got any mail in there. But of course, if you've got a pool, if you've got a garden and you need management of those things, that could obviously change the property management cost slightly as well. Public school costs in Portugal. Okay, quite simple answer. If you are a resident and if you are a or a citizen of Portugal, public school is free. Okay, this will range. It used to be that you used to have to pay for pre-primary or for creche. Sorry, that's now no longer the case. That is now also for free. But public schools, high school, middle school, primary school, these are all free for residents. When you're looking at private school fees, just to cover a few of those, we do have a couple of very good private schools in the area, and there you should be looking at around, for creche level, about 4,300 per year. I'm talking sort of the high end, the highest cost that you can expect here. A primary school about 4,400 and a high school 4,700 per year per student. That's for private schools, and I'm talking really the high end private schools in the area. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. In general, how do you think the recent change in government might affect the outlook for the property market in Portugal? Thank you for that question. I don't see a huge change. I think we've actually had a good outcome in the local elections. One of the previous questions that somebody asked was with the change in rental license laws, because previously the old government wanted to do away with rental licenses. The new government that's coming in looks like they're probably going to reinstate those laws. So I doubt that we're going to see any major change in property prices. Guys, the reality for us from a day-to-day living here on the Silver Coast, life continues the same. It's still a special place. It's still a safe place. It's still a calm place. People are still nice to each other, and people still want to live here. So from that perspective, your property costs are not going to be that badly affected. Okay, I'm going to have to, Tim, you're going to have to, this is in Dutch. So bear with me, Tim. Okay. I think what I'll do, Tim, is a question from Ben O'Keelan. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you this this question, and you can get in touch with Benno and talk to him directly.
Yeah,
it might be a bit easier than me trying to Question for you, Sofia. Is VAT going from 23 to 6%? I read this on ID Lister.
Uh,
You want to go for that one?
Sorry. Yes, we have three VAT rates, 6%, 13, and 23. The general tax rate is 23%. But for example, for alojamento local, the holiday rentals is 6%. So we have a few items in between, but the general tax rate will be 23%.
Okay, perfect. We do have a question here from Dave. It's not really a cost of living question, but I'm going to jump in anyways. The last question: if they do, the coastal areas get very damp? We have a very narrow country. It's not a very wide country, so we're close to the ocean. This is one of the reasons why we do specialize in new build, because for a home in an Atlantic climate, you do want something that's going to be good for that, with lots of natural light, double glazed windows, good thermoacoustic insulation. But the sun shines. It's an average winter temperature of 15 degrees. Beautiful weather here on the Silver Coast. So your coastal areas are coastal areas, but I wouldn't say they get very damp. But having a nice modern house definitely helps with that as well. Tim, do you want to add to that?
Well, I just I saw the question coming in, Dylan. Maybe I can pick up in the question that was for me first, or
Oh no, it's Tim. What I recommend is just getting in touch with Benno afterwards. We've got his
okay,
contacts here, and you can
okay,
talk to him directly. Okay, just
yeah,
to save a bit of
okay.
time. Good. I think, guys, I think that's about it. We've come up to the end of the presentation. Please, for any more information that we've been speaking about today, feel free to get in contact with us. You can go onto our website at portugalrealty.com. You can book a call in English, French, Dutch, and one of our representatives will be in touch with you to have a chat about any of the information that you wanted to chat to us about. And thank you so much for being on this webinar. We'll be doing another one next month, so stay tuned for that. And please follow us. Here are our contact details. You can get in touch with us at info@portugal-realty.com. You can also visit our Imo Portugal site. And also you can follow us on all our social media on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter is now called X. I don't know why, and Facebook. And then, yeah, we've also got a podcast which will give you loads of information about Portugal moving forward. We interview people on the podcast every week about life in Portugal. So thank you to my guests. You guys are amazing. And
It
thank
was
you
a
to everybody
pleasure.
for listening.
Thanks.
Obrigado, boa tarde, and we'll see you next time. Até próxima.
Bye.